There were only 9 women in my class of 300, and I only got accepted provided I passed the summer school. What are we going to do with you when you get married and want to stay home with your kids? The first time I got asked that, I didn't really have an answer. People won't remember exactly what you said, but they will remember exactly how you made them feel. Every decision you make, you have a temporary friend and a permanent enemy.
Good morning. Welcome to our podcast, Connecting is Caring. Connecting is Caring is a podcast of New Way Home Care. We provide home care services all over Los Angeles County, Orange County, and Riverside County. Our podcast covers very special guests, the hidden gems in our community, the hidden stories in our community, the hidden resources in our community. Today we have a wonderful, wonderful guest with us, Honorable Judge Mary Thornton House. Thank you, Judge, for coming on our program. We really sincerely appreciate it.
It's truly my honor. It truly is. So thank you for inviting me.
So just before you get into the meat of the things, I just wanted to touch upon, about your life. Tell us about your childhood, where you grew up, and the values and things like that you grew up with.
I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, and I was born into a traditional family. The wife stayed home no matter how talented she was, and my mother was very talented. She was a graduate of the Northwestern Speech and Communication School, and she also was one of the first women news writers and broadcasters in the United States. Amazing. It was a small little radio station in Southern Illinois, but still, she was one of the first. And in 1953, when I was born, y'all can do the math. I'm 73 now. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have credit cards even. That was kind of a new thing. And our family had a black and white TV, and we were one of the first to have it because my dad won it in a raffle and at the bowling alley. Okay. And then he won another TV, a color TV, and boy, were we popular. So I'm going to live in a very different world now than I did when I was living as a young child, toddler, grade school, junior high. But my dad was working his way up the corporate ladder, and we were transferred a lot. So we transferred to Dallas, Texas, and my dad worked his way up the corporate ladder there. I think the older generation listening to this will be sort of surprised, but I was in 5th grade, and I was living in Richardson, Texas, and we went down to see President Kennedy.
Amazing.
And I was there when they sped by. Anyway, and we were there for 3 or 4 years, and then my dad was transferred out here to Southern California. So my folks moved us into La Habra, and I went to high school there. All this time, I was a viola player. I learned how to play the viola in 3rd grade. And so I was working my way up in orchestras. And I did spend a couple of semesters in a private school in Texas that was a music school. And but I was basically based out of Southern California. And I was also a debater. We tried to work my music around my debate, so I went to a lot of speech tournaments and things like that.
Did you ever consider having a career in the music?
I did have one. I worked my way through college and law school playing. Everybody goes, why didn't you stick with it? And the thing is, I knew I would never reach a proficiency that would make me feel satisfied with my life. And I still play. I'm in the Pasadena Community Orchestra. Please look on our website. We give free concerts 4 a year at the First Church of the Nazarene and then 1 in the park. And it's we actually try to get the older generation there. We advertise at a lot of senior citizen centers and living facilities and homes, and because it's free. You can hear classical music for free. I love music, but I was an English major and a debater in college. And my mom said, and she was a very, very important influence in my life. My mom said, pick something that you feel you're good at if you've got to do it 8 or 9 hours a day. And get enough education that when you get married and have kids and stay home and start talking to yourself, you'll answer intelligently. So I looked at what my skills were, and it was speaking and writing. And I could have gone a lot of ways, but lawyers seem pretty obvious.
Is that how you chose?
That's how I chose to become an attorney. I wanted to do something most of the day that I felt I could excel in, whether I exceeded or not or whatever, but I had the skills to work toward excellence. And that was a guide my mom gave me. And it's something when people ask me what they should do with their lives, that's the same advice I give. So she has quite a legacy going here.
So your mom was the biggest influence on you for choosing the legal?
I think so. Actually, I was the middle child. And the other two were a bit, well, I hate to say it, drama queens. Okay. So I kind of just went my own way, and my mom was really surprised that I decided to go to law school and encouraged me.
So which law school did you?
I went to the University of San Diego.
San Diego. Okay.
So my mom was the biggest influence, but there were certain people that were the biggest impact. I believe it or not, my viola teacher, she taught me how to practice, how to dedicate myself to something, how to work out the kinks and move on.
The discipline.
The discipline, yeah, absolutely. I remember I was playing in the University of San Diego undergrad orchestra, just decompressed from law school. And I realized, sitting in that law library for hours on end and studying, I thought, how did I learn how to do this? How did I get the perseverance? And then when I started playing with them and playing more gigs, I realized I learned it being a musician. I learned how to stick with it and how to work out the problems. So yeah, they all kind of interrelated, I think. So yeah, so my teacher was impactful. And then my debate coach in high school, who I'm still very close to. She was only 10 years older when I started in high school. She was 23, a new teacher starting out. She was like my second mother. Her daughters are my nieces and their kids are my grandnephews, it's great to have that kind of second family opportunity now that my folks are gone.
It's interesting you said about the debate skills and things like that. Both my sons, for the same reason, they're in the legal profession. One has already graduated from UC San Francisco, and the other one is in Loyola Law School right now. He has completed his second year. They both chose this career because of their debate skills.
I think I want to make it clear to everybody here. I had a hard time. I never tested well on SATs or LSATs. Testing is not my forte. But I had straight A's, So the year that I applied to law school was kind of like a pinnacle in that cycle that happens. And they were just starting to set quotas for women and minorities in law school. And there were only 9 women in my class of 300. And I only got accepted provided I passed the summer school, first semester of civil procedure. So I graduate from UCLA at 6:00 and I start law school the next day at 9.
Oh, wow. And
I, of course, got the highest grade in the class, went into the day school and just did well. But that's who I was at the time. I remember interviewing at some law schools and saying, I really don't think that score is an indicator of how I'm going to be in law school, because it wasn't an indicator of my high school grades, the SATs. And one of the interviewers says, well, that's a very unique argument. And I'm thinking, and that's why I'd be a good lawyer.
You got to make your case, right?
Yeah, got to make. And then another impactful person in my life was Dorothy Nelson. She's a justice on the Ninth Circuit, but she started out in the LA Superior Court. But her brother lived across the street from us in La Habra, and I didn't have the grades or the scores to get into USC. I knew that. But she very graciously said, why don't you come down and I'll talk to you. So here she ushers me into this. She was dean of the USC Law School then. Ushers me into this gorgeous office, fit for a president, okay? And comes around the desk, sits down on the couch with me and just talks to me.
That's nice.
I really couldn't get over how open she was and how giving she was of advice. And then I find out she sent a letter to all the schools that I had applied to saying she'd met me and I was an excellent candidate. And she even recommended the University of San Diego, which is where I went. And when I got appointed to the bench, I went to a Ninth Circuit Superior Court luncheon, and there she was.
She must have been really proud.
She was just over the moon, And I had saved the letter. And I sent her, here, I sent it to her. And I would run into her from time to time. And actually, I appeared in front of her husband, who was a judge on the Superior Court.
Oh,
so
amazing.
It's a very small world. So when you ask me who were the most impactful people, my mom, and definitely my dad, he taught me how to lead people. And I can talk about him, my speech coach and my viola teacher, and Dorothy Nelson. Now, and I've had many mentors in my life, but I think those are the ones that stick out the most.
And you said you were one of the 8 women in the law school at that time. So what were the challenges, some of the challenges that you face in the early part of your legal profession? Because I believe there were not too many women at that time practicing law.
No, it was huge. My contracts professor, he who shall not be named, just announced that he didn't believe women should be in law school. And he knew feminine handwriting, and he was going to flunk all of it. I tell this to young women lawyers this day, and they just go, oh, that can't be. But it was. It was. I think the real cultural shock I went through was applying for jobs. Because I would go to an interview and they'd say, oh, you'd be our first girl lawyer. And in the back of my head, I wanted to say, well, when would I become your first woman lawyer? But I knew better than to say that. And I felt like, one of them said, what are we going to do with you when you get married and want to stay home with your kids? The first time I got asked that, I didn't really have an answer, but I thought about it. And the next time I got asked that, and I got asked that a lot, I said, look, you went through law school. You know how tough it was. You know how tough it was to pass the bar. Why would I give all that up? I said, plus, I want to be an example for my children, should I be lucky enough to have them. That there are ways to be a woman and also ways to be a professional. I got to tell you, when I interviewed at the city attorney's office of LA, which is where I ultimately ended up, there were 2 women and 2 men on the interview panel. I almost cried because that was the first time a woman had ever interviewed me for this job, for a legal job. And so when I got the job there, I was thrilled because I knew I wasn't going to have to prove I was a good girl lawyer. I just had to prove that I was a lawyer. And those first couple of decades were tough. I got called Little Missy, Little Madam, Dear,
Very patronizing way of...
Very patronizing.
Yeah.
I remember I did jury trials. I picked juries. I don't know how many I did in a given year. And I remember doing a case where opposing counsel would go, excuse me, Your Honor, she's making an invalid argument, or excuse me, Your Honor, she's this or she's that. And the judge would go, you're right, she is. And I'm just sitting there. And finally, after 2 days of that, I said, excuse me, Your Honor, she has a name, Mary House. And all the women on the jury clapped. And the judge was just shocked. And he was all over apologetic, I have to say. But it's now what we call implicit bias. You don't even know you're doing it. But that was that was not even a concept in anybody's head at the time.
It's very inspiring, and despite all that, you were able to push through and succeed and become a role model.
Well, yeah. I guess.
It's very inspiring to see that.
It was one of those things where you walked a fine line between fighting the system or easing into it to change it. And I kind of chose the easing in to change it. I think it was important for people to see me as a lawyer first. And so that was what I worked on. I remember doing a case, and it was I wish I'd filmed it. I was brilliant, I have to say. And the next time I went and I won. And the next time I went into that judge's courtroom, he turned to the opposing counsel. He says, you don't want to do a trial against Miss House. She may look nice and she may be kind-hearted and appear very sweet, but she's a shark, And I was like, that was like the highest compliment I could think of at the time. So yeah. And then I move into the judge world, and I feel like I was thrown back in time because, there were only 1,200 judges out of 6,000 women judges when I started.
Wow, that's a small percentage.
Very small percentage. I think it's 50-50 now, thank the Lord.
6,000, that's...
statewide.
Statewide, okay.
Yeah. I remember walking the back halls of the Pasadena courthouse, and I was hearing the clerks go, have you met our new judge? She's a woman. Okay. And then I realized all the assignments were putting the women judges in things like juvenile and dependency and family law, because I think the upper management, which was all male, thought, those assignments need a woman's touch.
Okay.
But that's changed now. But it takes a while. It's taken a while. Yeah.
And how did you choose to move from being a lawyer to being a judge?
Well, I probably shouldn't have mentioned earlier on, my husband's a huge influence in my life. And that he said, you'd be a great judge. You really ought to apply. I was the least political person I knew, and you have to be political to be appointed. And he said, fill the application out. He said, well, how are you going to feel, 10 years from now and wish you'd done it? And I thought, well, okay. So I filled it out, it was like almost 80 pages because you had to like list almost every case you'd ever been associated with or tried. And it was a huge, huge undertaking. And he helped me walk it to the mailbox because now it's filed electronically, but then you mailed it in. And we kind of waited. That was September of 1994. And we were visiting my parents. They had retired to Bermuda Dunes in Palm Springs area. And it was Christmas time, and my dad said, hey, what's going on with you? And my husband, Jim, said, well, she's applied to be a judge. Mary's applied to be a judge. And my dad goes, I think I play golf with a guy. Send me what you sent the governor. So like 5 weeks later, I'm sent to this judicial evaluation committee. They call it the Jenny Committee, which is huge. I mean, someone picked my application out of the file cabinet, and said, oh, we're going to look at her out of all the thousands that they get. What they do then is you supply them with at least 150 names of people who know you. And then they do their own mailing. And there's like a form you check, for the different qualities they're looking for. It's like getting a report card on your adult life.
The vetting process is very detailed.
Very detailed, yes. And then they set up an interview once they have enough information about you. They set up an interview. 24 hours before it, they messenger over all of the negative comments. Almost didn't go to the interview.
Do you get to see the
negative? Yeah, you get to see the negative, not the positive.
Okay.
But I walked in and I did my interview and I called a couple of judges. I said, what do I do? This is awful, And they go, don't worry about it, blah, blah, blah. Actually, one of the interviewers says, we're not supposed to do this, but I want to read you what a judge wrote about you. And it was very positive. So then the next thing I know, the LA County Bar Association is doing the exact same thing. And they interview and they rank you extremely well qualified, qualified, not qualified. And you never know your ranking. You never know, or not supposed to know. And then the next step is you go and you get a appointment with the appointments secretary if they're really interested in you. If you're really someone they're seriously considering, they do that. So I have an appointment in December of 95. At one point in the interview, Mr. Davies, he said, you don't have any letters here from judges or lawyers that know the governor. And I said, I don't think I know any people. And he looked at me and he goes, you're a very industrious young woman. Get some. And I said, okay. So when I was at the city attorney's office, I represented the police and fire departments. That's where I met my husband. He's a retired firefighter, arson investigator. When we got married 34 years ago, people said, oh, it took a man brave enough to run into burning buildings to marry you. So I represented Daryl Gates. And I don't know if he's probably before your time, but he was a pretty infamous police chief of LA. And I called him on the phone. I said, Chief, I've made it this far without you. I need to get letters from the judges or people that know the governor, and can you help me? Because he was political in his own way as well. And he said, don't worry about it. I'm having lunch with Duke Majan tomorrow. And I got appointed 4 weeks later.
Wonderful. So how long did that process take from the time
For me, it was very short. It was like a year and a half. Most people, they're 2 to 3 years.
That's after you apply for the judge position, 2 to 3 years normally.
I was very detailed. And I remember it was really funny because my orchestra got an opportunity to get a donation if we would all show up at the Pasadena Convention Center and with our instruments and our black tie, black concert dress. We were going to get a big donation from a commercial that they filmed there. So I left the house and I said to my husband, I said, well, this is the one day the governor's office is going to try to get home. And my pager was broken too. Now, we didn't have cell phones, remember?
I remember the pager.
My pager was broken. And so I get home and there's a message on the landline answer machine that says, hi, Mary, this is John Davies. I wanted to talk to you today. They said you were taking a day off and here's my phone number and call me back. So I call him back and I tell his secretary, I said, look, I got orchestra rehearsal starting in 30 minutes. So I hope he can call me back before then. And my husband's going, what are you doing? And I don't know. It was just like instinct or whatever. And so about 10 minutes later, he calls me and he says, I understand you have something better to do than talk to me. I said, oh, no, I'm sorry. It's just, I talked to you about how important my music was and I have rehearsal tonight.
You made a commitment for that time.
I went to orchestra and I don't even remember playing. I mean, it was just like over the top kind of thing. And it was really interesting. I couldn't tell anybody that night because they do a press release the next day. So the next week, my conductor announced that I'd become a judge and everybody kind of went, oh, they drew back. And I said, hey, guys, I'm still playing.
Still the same person.
I know. But that was a portent of things to come. And I pulled back and I said, well, I'm still going to play out of tune, guys, and everyone laughed and that was fine. But yeah, that was my road to becoming a judge.
And what surprised you the most after you became a judge?
I was told I would feel isolated, but I didn't really get it till it happened. You lose your first name. No one calls you Mary anymore. They call you Judge or Your Honor. There are a rigid set of rules that we have to live by, ethical and legal, and they're very constraining. That surprised me, how it impacted my life. You can't put a political sign on your front lawn. You can't put a bumper sticker on your car. You can't let anyone buy you anything or give you anything. The people that you knew before you became a judge, just peripherally, they're very distant. And then the ones you really knew, you kept close, but then they couldn't appear in front of you. They couldn't.
They should not be any conflicts.
Yeah. So it was, and I'm an extrovert, not most judges are not. They like being back in their chambers and thinking about things. And I like to get out and do things. And I thought I had wandered into a new dimension because no one wanted to go to lunch. They had things to do. It was lonely. It was very lonely. And that surprised me. People had warned me, but it didn't sink in until it actually happened.
It's very interesting you say that. I mean, I would never have thought about it till you said it. I was thinking more like, now you're in an elevated position, people respect you more, and you're recognized wherever you go. Those are the things that normally one would think of, but you're absolutely right about being lonely.
Truman said the buck stops here. Well, that's really true. When you're up on the bench, there are so many guidelines that we follow. Following the law is the big one. Being ethical. I like to think I had a dash of empathy in there. But yeah, it's a lonely job. It is a really lonely job because, you're just up there. And there's a saying in my business, every decision you make, you have a temporary friend and a permanent enemy.
That's really profound.
If you think about it, nobody enters a courthouse particularly happy. I will tell you, this is kind of a personal experience, but judges notoriously have bad backs because you're sitting and the stress, kind of sinks down in your spine. So I was really having a lot of trouble. And a girlfriend of mine said, hey, they're doing this Reiki healing thing over at a yoga place. And I go, yeah, right. She says, come on, it's $20 for 30 minutes. So I go and they lay you down and they start working on you, their hands over you. And they didn't know what I did for a living. And this woman goes, oh my God, there are so many angry people swimming over you, circling over you.
So this person knows nothing about who you are.
Nothing. I felt like if you have a ball of yarn in your back that's so tight, it hurts you. I felt like they were pulling the string. So it worked. I was amazed. But I mean, when you think about it, the only happy things that happen in courthouses are marriages, adoptions, swearing in a new lawyer, or that quirky name change. Okay, that's about it. The lawyers are happy to be there because they're working. Jurors don't want to be there. The litigants don't want to be there. That kind of karma can drag someone down if you're not aware of it.
And you have to be mentally strong to be through it, right? To be really strong.
Yeah.
And Judge, from the bench, you see a lot of things. And to segue into one of the topics you want to discuss today, you hosted a program at the PFAC conference recently where you spoke about the values in the profession, how important the values are or how important the lack of values are. I wanted to really talk to you about the consequences or the lack of values in the system. What do you see from the bench?
I've seen it generationally, and I'm sorry if millennials are watching this because I'm sure there's some wonderful millennials out there, but I really noticed a big difference in attitude by that age group. They seemed to think like I worked for them. They were late to court all the time. Not a good value. They acted, indignant if I ruled against them, which is not a good optic for a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
I felt they had a sense of entitlement that they were upset with me for not acknowledging, and I talked about this with my colleagues. I talked about it with other lawyers, and it was really interesting. They said, you got to coach these people. You can't direct them. You can't order them. You have to coach that mentality to get, because they're very smart. They passed the bar. They went to law school,
Yes.
And then you get the older group that think they know everything, and here I am. I was 42 when I became a judge. That was pretty young at the time. And it's like these older lawyers would come in and, well, Your Honor, we're going to take care of you. And it's like, okay, you got to kind of gauge just in life, gauge who your audience is and try to communicate on their level. I think, and this is advice I would give to anybody in a marriage, in a job, particularly as a caregiving person, is that people won't remember exactly what you said, but they will remember exactly how you made them feel.
Very important. I'm going to share this. We do the training in our office quite a bit. And this is actually the exact wordings that we use in our training. They won't remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for us in our business, it's everything about that. That's one of the value system we really emphasize with our team. And so I'm so glad you said that, because what we do to others is what they remember.
Another little tidbit I learned in marriage counseling. Every marriage has its rocky moments. Mine's no different. Although people think if you're a judge, you've got the world by the tail, but you don't. And the counselor would go, now, Jim, tell Mary. And so I'd listen. And I think I'm a good listener. I'm a judge. Come on, hello. And then the counselor would go, now, Mary, tell Jim what you heard. I would interpret what he said. And he goes, no, I didn't mean that at all. And I go, no, I didn't mean that. And then we worked it out. I started doing that from the bench. Lawyers would argue, and I would just say, oh, so what you're telling me is, and I would sum up. And they would go, yeah. So they felt like I got it. All right. And then they'd go, no. And I go, okay, what am I missing? I think that's good in every relationship, husband, wife, son, daughter, mother, father, caregiver.
Communication.
Yeah. It's good communication. So, lawyers tell me, and I feel like I'm bragging here, but they tell me, you never always ruled in my favor, but I always felt like you listened to what I had to say. And I thought, God, that's the highest compliment I could get as a judicial officer. Didn't agree with you, but you thought about it, and it was clear you'd done your homework and were prepared, So, yeah.
In your view, what does it mean to truly serve an older, vulnerable adult?
That is a really interesting question. I think there's a baseline how you treat people no matter what their age is.
It is.
Right. And you never want to deviate from that no matter what you're doing. And that's giving people respect and dignity. To me, that's the baseline.
It is.
I was very impacted by, it was a medical series, a drama series. And the nurses were trying to teach the doctors how to be more sensitive to dependent or
the family members,
senior citizens. They put them into a wing, and they put really constricting gloves to mimic arthritis, and they made people crouch down. They made them use a walker or be put in a wheelchair, try to open a door, try to open a can. And I'm thinking, oh, it can't be that bad to get older, but it is.
It is.
I'm getting older, and all of a sudden I can't open up a jar. It's like, what's going on here? So I thought back on that as I started reaching these, I don't like to think of them as milestones, but, these issues. So I think empathy is really important, putting yourself in their place if you can. Like I said, that goes back to making a person feel like they've been listened to, respected. I have a lot of women friends who were like, and still are, but, knocked down, drag out gorgeous. And as they got older and got wrinkles and gray hair, they were complaining about how they would go when they went into a dealership before, everybody would rush up and, want to help them. And they were always the first served at the bar. And but now I'm invisible, and I always was. So I said, well, and I think that happens with senior citizens. They become invisible.
Yeah,
in this country anyway. There's other countries where they're absolutely revered.
It is. And also culture everywhere is changing quite a bit. I mean, I come from India where elders are treated differently, or I would love to say it that way, but it's going through a change back in my country too. Yeah, it is changing. I have to say this, in here, US, I have actually had the opportunity to work with a lot of wonderful families. The value systems those families had for their parents, that will rival the culture anywhere in the world. I've seen some really, really good families here.
And I've seen some really bad ones.
We see that too. With the conservatorships, we see that.
Guardianships. Yeah.
Guardianships, conservatorships, we see that.
If you're in criminal, even in civil, even in probate as a judge, it's a dark world because you don't see the best of people. They're angry, remember?
I know. And they come to court because there is a problem or there is a dispute, right?
I remember when I was in a civil court and we were having a pretrial conference and there was a baby had died during birth and the parents were suing for medical malpractice. And the plaintiff got up and was talking. And then I said, and the defense attorney was there too. And I said, so what's our trial estimate on this case? And the defense attorney, a woman, said, oh, it's a dead baby case, maybe 5 days. And I looked at her and I said, counsel, we're not going to use those words. I said it nicely. I said, hey, I get it. This is all you live with, but we're not going to call this.
You had to show some
case.
respect, right?
Yeah. And she was appropriately mortified. And I ended up talking to her afterwards. I said, look, I did defense work at the city and we would talk about, the injuries in sort of a cavalier way. I know it's a defense mechanism, but we just can't be thinking that way in open court. And you don't want to be thinking that way. Otherwise, you're not going to be a good advocate.
We had to have that compassion. So what are some of the strong personal values that are important for professionals and there are different professionals serving the seniors. So what are some of the very important values?
I think it's really critical to say, don't do it just for the money.
I love that.
Don't do it just for the money. Do it because you, in fact, get something back from it. You get pleasure out of a problem solved or pleasure out of easing someone's pain or their burden. The really good caregivers, and as you know, in my family circumstance, I am in fact using a new wave caregiver in my home who's wonderful. She has made my husband feel incredibly comfortable and willing to accept care. He's a very independent guy. And it's made a huge difference in our lives. And I don't think she thinks of it as the money. I really don't. And I've seen that in other situations. My mom, again, I'm going to be talking about my mom. She said, if you do something you love, the money will come, or enough money will come. Maybe that's the better way to say it. I remember the years I was dating and I was a lawyer. You did clock in at 8 and leave at 5. That just you got a salary. But I worked evenings and weekends. I did as a judge too, with different assignments. But he could not understand why I didn't get time and a half, why I didn't, make more because of what I was doing. And I said, no, this is what I have to do for my clients. This is what I have to do to be an advocate. And the same thing on the judge thing. So my first advice is, if you're looking to make a lot of money, don't go into caregiving unless you also have the calling for it. That would be kind of my biggest advice.
Very, very true. When I have always spoken about this, I consider myself in a very privileged position because, of course, we get paid for what we do. But at the end of the day, I get the satisfaction that we really, truly helped somebody in their lives. That's something more precious for me. We have done a lot of choices, taken a lot of choices in the past and continues to do where we always put the client first. And sometimes we take decisions that may not pan out, but we still took the decision in favor of the client.
I think in my field, you put the law first. You have to follow the law. And the law isn't always kind, and it is always fair. based on the circumstances. I remember feeling very, very sorry for people in front of me, and even going back in chambers and just wanting to sob. But I had to rule against them because that was the law.
It's a very difficult profession. I wouldn't do good as a legal profession. I mean, I'm not cut out to be that.
It does take a certain personality.
It does
type.
take a certain personality.
Yeah, when you're a lawyer and an advocate, and I was such a speech and debating, and I would sit and watch these lawyers in court, and they would screw up so badly, and I just had to keep my mouth shut. I mean, you cast aside the advocate role, and then you're the referee. And I remember judges that would try a case for me, and I would think in the back of my head, well, if you're going to try it for me, please don't lose, because they would interrupt and they would get involved and they would argue what they would do. I mean, it's a real adjustment to go from that advocate position into the judicial position.
Circling back onto the values part of it, there are different professionals like fiduciaries and care managers and care providers like us, and there are other professionals too who are serving the older adults. What is the downside of being in any of this profession without the right set of values? Because at the center, you have this vulnerable older adult. So it's very critical that we have a true set of values for us to serve that older adult. What are the downsides of not having the right set of values?
Well, the downsides are huge because you are impacting a human being. And if you don't have the calling, if you don't have the skills, then you're harming someone and you're harming yourself. There are people that, again, to feed their families, went down into the mines. And my dad, I remember we used to have popcorn night, and we were so thrilled that we'd have popcorn for dinner. And then we'd realize it was the end of the month and they'd run out of money. And it wasn't until the next day, the paycheck, that we got food in the house, So I think I'm circling back to know who you are as a person and know if you fit. And if you don't fit, don't do it. Unless you absolutely have to go into that mine to feed your family, or you have to, if you want to be a fabulous actress and you got to be a waitress or waiter to make that goal, that's fine. But I think the values I would look at is someone who understands what their role is. They stay in their lane. They do it with integrity. Integrity is what you do when no one is looking.
I took that wording out of your presentation. Integrity is doing the right thing when no one is watching. I absolutely love that. And particularly when you're talking about the seniors and as professionals, we have to have that integrity because nobody's watching. Whether it is care providers, fiduciaries, care managers, their financial advisors, nobody's watching. And it's the integrity of the people that really serves the older adults better.
I'll give you an example. I got an email the other day from a lawyer that I do not remember. And he says, Judge House, I saw that you're a mediator and I got your email, and he goes, I think about you a lot. So I was a young lawyer. I had really screwed up a case. You called me up to the bench with the other attorney and you said to me, counsel, I think you're about to lie to me. Don't. Mm-hmm. You screwed up. Own it, because your reputation is only as good as your last bad act.
Very good. Very important.
And he went back, he owned it, and he says, I have been living with that my whole career. And I want to thank you for that. And so I don't remember doing that. I do not remember. I have no clue. It sounds like something I might do. But, the cover-up is always worse than the crime. It really is.
But that really anchored his life.
It did. And who knew, And that's what I want to say to people. It's not just if you're a fiduciary or a caregiver. Try to live your life like that, because in the end, it will be very hard. But you'll sleep at night and you'll have the respect of people. And I think seniors, I get so frustrated. All these health portals, signing on, passwords, I get so frustrated. And so I'll call and then I'll get, go online, do this, do that. I'm having trouble. So I'll get a human being on the line. And I lose it. I got to admit, I lose it. I go, look, I'm 73 years old and I'm really intelligent, but I'm having a hard time maneuvering your website. And I'm a senior citizen. I think you're discriminating against me.
I know.
I want to talk to a human being to help me, right? And then I know I'm being a little ugly with them. And I said, I try not to take it out on you because you're just there, but really I need help. And every once in a while I get someone who's so lovely and they'll walk me through it and all that. If you just take the time to understand how frustrating all this new age stuff is for seniors. And, it's so frustrating, and just don't, roll your eyes and go, oh, they're stupid. We're not stupid. We just never grew up with it.
It is challenging. I mean, technology can be challenging, and
can be. It is.
It is challenge. It is challenge. We see that all the time. For example, when you're setting up new clients, most times we send DocuSign but not all the clients are comfortable with it, and we'll tell them saying that if you don't want to actually do it digitally, one of us will come with the print copy, and we can help you to walk through that. So we recognize that it's not the simplicity that matters in that case. For some of our clients, they want to actually have the paper in front of them, review it, that feel of it. Okay, now I know I'm comfortable with signing this. So we just are prepared for that. We always tell them, we are sending this to you digitally, but if you want to get a paper copy, we are more than happy to send you the paper copy too.
I write a book every year for Thomson Reuters. It's a legal book. I have to print out because if I just keep reading the scroll, I don't catch the typos. I don't catch, the grammar. I have to print it out. That's just because that's the way my mind works. I think that's not true for the
younger generation. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and they don't understand us. Everybody goes, oh, when you pass the bar, well, I went down to the Daily Journal window, saw my name, went home and called my folks. And everybody goes, why'd you have to go home to call? Because there were no cell phones. There was no internet to look up the list, So anyway, and the other thing, I think the other value I have that I think is important is self-care. When you are dealing with so much pain and anguish, you get what I call compassion fatigue, okay? It means you're so involved in taking care of someone else that you forget to take care of yourself.
Take care of yourself. That's so important.
There's a value to, think about it. You're in the airplane and they go, oh, when the masks drop down, put yours on first before you help someone else. I learned that the hard way. I ended up getting irritatingly sick from something because I was so wrapped up in taking care of my husband. And I think I learned I had to kind of back off, get help, which is hard to do when you're a control freak, and judges are control freaks. And it was true on the bench too. When you find yourself stalled and unable to finish things and sad all the time, you gotta do things that regenerate your sense of who you are, so you can help the people that are there. So that's become a real important. They called it burnout, and that's probably a good word, but I think compassion fatigue means you're not done. When you're burnt out, you're done. Compassion fatigue is, oh, I have to fix this. I have to work on this. I have to see where I can improve myself through exercise, a better diet, or whatever, or taking a break or backing off and doing things that are important to you.
I'm so happy you spoke about this because not many people are aware of it. They get into the flow of the things and they don't understand it, and they just get sucked into that situation, and they just see the whole world spiraling out of control at that point.
And I've seen it a lot in lawyers, judges, fiduciaries. You want to kind of like, oh, what can I do to help you? But not my lane. But yeah. No, again, a personal experience. Before I got for my husband, I was kind of depressed because I thought, oh, I'll never get married and have kids. And it was affecting my work. And I went to see a great therapist. Actually, he was very influential. And he said, what do you do for fun? And I said, what do you mean fun? He goes, write down 5 things you do for fun. I go, well, I go to Hawaii. Yeah, that's fun. I couldn't think of 4 other things. So he says, well, let's talk about that. And I said, well, I go to lunch with my friends every day. Well, yeah. So he says 20 minutes of fun a day. And even then I was bargaining with him. Well, if I save up the 100 hours during the week, the 5 times 20, then I can do it all on the weekend, right? He goes, no. Yeah, every day. So when I find myself getting, these feelings of whatever, I go, what have I done for fun today? And then I try to do something for fun.
I never thought about it that way, but that's very important. 20 minutes of fun a day. I think we should all remind ourselves to do that.
Yeah, even if it's just sitting in your chair and closing your eyes, that's not necessarily fun, but it's regenerative.
Regenerative, yeah. Kind of going inward and connecting. Circling back to the value you talked about, integrity. Can integrity be taught?
I think taught by modeling. I had two parents that were fabulous, okay? And I think I learned more by their example of integrity. But you can always try to teach somebody something, but it's innate. I really think it is. Again, a personal experience. My stepson got diagnosed with ADHD, and it just sent my husband spiraling because he was fighting with kids, and he was, just grades were terrible. And I had a close friend who was a child psychiatrist, and I got him on the phone to talk to Jim, and he said, look, kids come out the way they're going to come out. So what you got to do is love them, give them a lot of love, and give them a sense of moral values. He said, I recommend a religious school for ADHD kids.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So Kyle went to Desert Christian out in Lancaster. And we took courses on how to deal with his ADHD and everything. And I'm proud to say I snuck him in a Taekwondo class one summer we had him. And his parents didn't want it. I was the bonus mom, stepmom, and he loved it. And that taught him discipline. That taught him respect. That taught him, to care. And now he runs his own Taekwondo studio. He has an after-school daycare program, a summer program. He's got over 180 families. And a lot of them are autistic. A lot of them are ADHD. And he is just doing so well. So I think, yeah, maybe it can be taught, but it would be in conjunction with watching the examples, My dad was a fabulous leader, and I learned a lot from him. He would always eat breakfast at Bob's Big Boy about 7 o'clock in the morning around the corner from the plant. He was a dairy executive. And everybody in his management chain knew they could come and have breakfast with him. So I worked there one summer, and so I drove in. My mother would charge us mileage if we used the family car. Mm-hmm. So I drove in. I drove in with him, and I'd sit there and eat breakfast, right? And these guys would come in and gals would come in and sit down, and they'd have a problem. And I noticed he'd say, with the men, well, what's the bottom line here? And he'd talk to them, problem solve. If there was a woman, he'd come in and go, why do you think that's happening? And they would go through, well, she's jealous. She's doing this. He's doing that. And he goes, well, how do you think we ought to fix it? The teamwork. And I watched his language, and I learned that he had every problem he was going to face that day solved by the time he went to work, because his people knew they could count on him. And I think that those values, by watching them and understanding them to this day, yeah, maybe integrity can be taught. It definitely can be enhanced. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or not. But
it does. I mean, there's a reason why I asked that question. When we recruit caregivers, the recruiting department, one of the things that I personally believe in, and I have told them, is, compassion is something you can never teach. Either you have it or you don't. Skills, on the other hand, we can teach them the skills. Let's say if they don't have this particular skill, we can teach them that. But compassion, either you have it or you don't.
I agree.
So I was modeling this question along those lines. I was wondering if, integrity is a value that can be taught, and you had some wonderful examples for that.
I don't think you need to be religious, but I think you need to have a moral base.
Yes.
Yeah, that guides you. And a lot of religions have great guidance to learn from. So, yeah, I thought that was a really great question. I'm going to be thinking about it some more.
Judge, what advice would you give for adult children who are caring for their parents?
It's kind of a summary of what I've talked about today. Make sure you take care of yourself. Don't treat you're going to see your adult parents become more childlike, but don't treat them like children. They get it on some level. I remember, the nurse walks in your hospital room and goes, oh, how are we today? I go, I don't know how you are. I only know how I am. Okay. Being condescending, maybe, like I said, the communication skills I've talked about, say, hey, Dad, can you tell me what's really bothering you? You seem upset about something. I'm here. I'm here to listen. Letting them know that you are there not to disrespect them, but to give them their dignity. I think that's really incredible to do. Because I know I don't think when I get older, I'm going to want to be treated like a child or treated like I have no value or no worth, even if I'm very ill, I mean, my husband with his diagnosis, he's still laughing at my jokes. That's all I care about at this point, Once he does that, quits doing that, I might be a little bit worried, but he's still there. The last thing you want is someone to tell you that what you're telling them doesn't really matter, isn't important, which people tend to do. Oh, you'll be okay. Or don't ever use now calm down. Don't, I'm just thinking that makes me angry, You're telling me to calm down. No. So, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is incorporate in your everyday language with older or vulnerable people. I'd say vulnerable because you have people that are in their 40s that are vulnerable that you might be taking care of. So dependent or vulnerable people or senior citizens, give them the value that they deserve. You give it to them by respect, dignity, communication, all of those things. And skills. Go take classes, learn how to be better. I mean, once you stop learning, you might as well pack it up and move on to something else. I mean, I go to a lot of seminars. I learn a lot. I give seminars and learn a lot by putting together the information that I want to impart. Those are all important things, keep learning. I think that's really incredible to do.
Yeah, I get to see a lot of humorous situations in the families. Sometimes I go to visit families and, the adult children would have told us what's going on. And then I talk to the parents and then they just immediately agree to what I'm saying. And then the son or the daughter will later come and talk to me like, I said the same thing to dad and he wouldn't listen to me. I said, there's a difference. It doesn't matter whether you're 60 years or 70 years old, you're still the child for your parents. I'm not a child to your parent, I'm a professional. So he listens to me or she listens to me. When you say the same thing, you're the child and it's discounted.
Well, it's true. It's true. I think in almost every relationship. I mean, I can say the exact same thing to my husband about our finances and he's disagreeing with me. And then we go to the accountant and the accountant explains it to him. Oh, okay. Yeah, I got it. So I know there are times in my life where I need a translator for him, I also, again, another example, when we had the kids, I'm a stepmother, but we had the kids a lot, like almost 50% time. And my husband would be on these 24, 36, 72-hour shifts. So I was like a single stepmom. Okay. They hated to go to bed. So I don't know how I got this idea, but I went in the kitchen, I took the kitchen timer and I said, this timer is going to decide when you guys go to bed. And I'd put it down and I'd play with them. The timer would go off. I go, oh, God, timer. Here's the timer. We got to go. I hate you, timer. And we'd walk off. Yeah. That happened in court. The law is my timer. When people are upset with me, I'll go, look, I don't have a choice. This is the law. And the same thing happens when you go in and explain exactly what the kids have said. You're the timer. It's human nature and you can't fight against it. You gotta wrap it up and deal with it and roll with it. And so, yeah, I can see my caregiver going to get my husband to eat, but can I know? Because I'm telling him what to do. He hates me telling him what to do. He's always hated me telling him what to do. So it's just you have that relief valve, that timer,
I mean, it's not just about what is being told, it's about who is telling it, right? There's one final question. I'm going to read this one. When people look back on their careers, they often talk about their achievements. But when you look back on your life, what values are you most proud of that you lead by?
This is a poem by Ralph Waldo Emerson and I'll give you a copy of it. This was under my bench blotter the whole time I was a judge, the whole time. And sometimes at the end of the day, I would read it and go, did I do this today? And the poem is called, What is Success? To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. And that's what I think of as my achievements. I think I've done all those. Well, I didn't garden. I'm not a gardener. But I think this was kind of my maybe my value checklist. I don't know. But it kind of directed me in my life. So I look back and I know I've mentored people and they've been grateful for it. So that's like 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever. I've worked very hard in the area of child abuse prevention. I still do. I actually head up a charitable foundation, and we work on safe sleep for infants and no hit zones for violence. And we started the safe surrender of the babies at the police stations or fire stations 20 years ago. So I look back at all I've done, and I think I've matched my values with my actions. And I think that's really critical. Matching your values with your actions. And this kind of is my report card.
This is beautiful.
Isn't it beautiful?
It is beautiful. And I'm going to have this as my screensaver. And this is really important because we don't think about it, but this is really what it is. I always wondered, what is life? What are we working towards for in life? What is success? It can mean different things to different people. But I think this kind of gives a more...
Well, it incorporates a lot of what I've tried to do. The 20 minutes of fun a day, laughing often and much, working hard so that people who appear in front of me respect me. I love kids, just it's hard when you're a judge to find the best in others, but you can, and I think a lot of times a person's legacy is totally unknown to them. Like that gentleman that sent me the email, I wouldn't have known that I had provided a talisman for his career. I wouldn't have known that.
Judge, I think it's very obvious. You touch so many lives, and you are an inspiration for a lot of people, including me. It's been so wonderful having you, an honor and a pleasure having you on this program. And thank you for coming for this program.
Well, something, you did kind of give me some questions to think about. And even this exercise, I'm thinking, wow, I've had a great life. So I thank you for bringing that to my attention. But you all do such wonderful work here. And I personally appreciate it and professionally respect it.
Thank you, Judge. Coming from you, it means a lot, and I sincerely appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome.